Where it is 14 minutes to 7 this Wednesday morning. Well, how do you feel? How would you feel if your local council decided to raise rates by about 40% in the middle of a cost of living crisis? Last night, the Northern Beaches Council voted to raise residents' rates by 40% over 3 years. There were hundreds of locals rallying outside the chambers. Jacqui Scruby is the independent member for Pittwater, and she was there last night and joins us now. Morning, Jacqui.
Good morning, Craig. How are you?
How was the feeling there last night? I hear the kind of had to be closed down a couple of times. What was it like?
Oh, look, there was definitely outrage for sure. There was a group of people outside protesting. They came into the chamber, listened to the meeting, and there were a few opportunities to have a break because people were shouting out. But all in all, it was a well-managed meeting and people got to have their say, which was important.
And in the end, it was quite a close vote. I think 8-7. 8 people voted in favour of the rise of 39.6% over 3 years. Do you understand their reason for this?
Look, I think there are two issues here. I think the first is, the perception of whether council is operating efficiently, and that's public perception. And then there's also the councillors who have obviously gone through a lot of the detail and have been involved in this. Some of them are very new and only got voted in last year, and they've had to inherit this problem. But others have been on council for a long time and understand the issues. Yes, it was close, and I suppose the difference is whether assets and services are maintained or whether there's an opportunity for those to be improved. And the type of assets we have in our electorate obviously include, surf clubs and wharves. So I think there was definitely a lot of consideration, a lot of questions by councillors. So I don't think the decision was made lightly, but I do think there may be issues around, public perception, making sure that we're doing performance audits of our councils and even things like reviewing CEO salaries.
Yeah, it's interesting on the text line. Lynette in Narrabeen says, "Morning, Craig. I don't know anyone who agreed to this 40% rate rise. I couldn't make the council meeting, so I looked at the agenda online yesterday, all 340 pages of it." It's interesting when you see something like 340 pages. I feel like if, as part of you goes, they're putting so much up there to confuse us, so we can't be across the issue. But if you put up 9 pages, people would probably say, you're hiding the details. So there obviously was a lot of detail put out by the council there. They're blaming things like natural disasters and ageing infrastructure and the pandemic. Has the Northern Beaches Council been hit harder than other councils by this?
No, and I think the evidence is the fact that I think 57 councils have applied for a special rate rise in the last few years. And to me, as a state member, because I'm not across all the detail that a councillor would be who's been sitting on council for many years, the reason I attended last night was obviously to listen to the meeting, review the details. But as a state member, this really says to me that we have a structural issue with the way councils are being funded. We know that there are 2 inquiries at the moment. So there's been a New South Wales inquiry where the report and recommendations have been handed down. There's a federal inquiry where that report is pending. And to me, I've got to look at my jurisdiction and what action I can take. And that is realising that we do have a problem given the number of councils across New South Wales and Australia who are applying for special rate rises. So either there's an issue with the way councils are funded and there's structural reform needed, or there's an issue with all these councils that need to improve efficiencies, and that's what we need to get the answer to.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the underlying issue that's leading to all of these councils putting their fees up by so much? Independent councillor Vincent DeLuca, he opposed the motion, suggesting that they should sell or redevelop 2 council car parks to raise funds. I guess that's the balance. It becomes, do you charge the public more, or do you start selling off assets? Where do you lie on that?
Look, I don't believe in continually selling off assets because it gives you a nice little sweetener for a short amount of time. And then obviously that goes. And I think our electorate in particular has seen the selling off and the neoliberal policies of the selling off and privatisation of our hospital, of our buses. So I think that's a knee-jerk reaction. It is one that needs to be considered, and I fully supported Councillor Hackman's resolution, which was a couple of weeks ago, which was to look at asset rationalisation and look at how to monetise, and including Manly Town Hall, how to monetise some of those assets. But I think we need to think longer term about, how to fund this. And that's where it comes back on me as a state member to be saying, the state government, federal government needs to stop cost shifting to councils. And that was one of the findings of the inquiry. And also look at being able to make sure that grants that are given by the state government are for things that, councils want and need. We're seeing so many grants come through that council then implements, and they're really solutions in search of a problem, because people are wanting prioritisation of things like fixing footpaths rather than creating shared spaces. And often the work's done shoddily as well, which again comes back to that perception of inefficiency.
Yeah. Now, this has to go through IPART, the Independent Pricing and Regulatory Tribunal. Do you think they should say yes to this 39% raise?
Oh, look, I'm not going to go ahead and
I thought I'd try anyway, Jacqui. Don't worry.
No, look, I think that's the other thing to recognise is that IPART is independent. They do go through a thorough process, and people should have confidence that it is going to an independent tribunal now to have a look at it. As I said, I think the fact that 57 councils have gone through this, I think we're not alone this time. I think there may be 4 to 8 councils that are also applying for a special rate variation. Someone at a state and federal level needs to call this out and say, what are we doing to support local governments if this is a trend that's happening? And that's my role. My role is not to sort of get involved in council or in IPART.
Well, we'll speak to you when you think you've got to the bottom of this problem. Thanks for speaking to us today, Jacqui.